Hello and welcome to this screencast about Visual Studio Code. Today we're going to see how to write an extension for Visual Studio Code. It's quite easy, you'll see, because the API is very well built. It's quite easy to discover its features, and there are lots of them. When you write an extension, you basically have access to the whole Node.js API, as well as the Visual Studio Code API. What this one offers you is the ability to create views, commands, and display information through message boxes, interactive questions, answers, and lots of small but very well built interactions. So let's get started. So what we're going to build for an extension is a Star Wars extension, which is going to use the Star Wars API available at swapi.co. And what this API gives you is simply a list of characters, movies, and things like that from the Star Wars universe. So what we're going to build is an interface to access the characters from the Star Wars movies. But let's start simple. How do you create an extension? Well, step one is to just run one command, which is the following. npx is something that's built in to Node. It's basically a utility that downloads packages from npm and then executes them. So what this command is going to do is ask you a few questions about your new extension, an identifier, a name, things like that, and it's going to build for you a few of the files that are necessary to write an extension. So the only two files that we're going to look at today is the actual code of the extension, which in our case is going to be a TypeScript file. So it's going to be extension.ts. You'll see it's quite empty for now. And the other one is the package.json file, which is really what you'd expect. It has the dependencies of your project. If you need to install anything from npm, you can do it as you would usually do, npm install whatever you need. So in our case, since we're going to communicate with an HTTP service, the dependency I have already added is on the node fetch package, which allows me to do HTTP requests. And I've written a few lines of code to communicate with the Star Wars API. As you can see, it's only a fetch call and a small TypeScript interface to declare what's going to be returned from the API. Very simple. So again, let's have a look at the extension.ts file. What you can see is that two functions have been generated for us, activate and deactivate. The purpose of these two is quite clear from the comments that are added by the generator. Basically, the activate function is going to be called whenever your extension is started and deactivate whenever it's stopped. So in the package JSON, you can configure the exact events that are going to trigger the activation of your extension. In our case, I've put a star there, so whenever VS Code is going to start, our extension is going to start as well. Let's do Hello World. What's a Hello World? Well, in Visual Studio Code, it's a window dot show information message. You'll see that the autocomplete works very well because the whole API is built in TypeScript, so you get type checking and everything you'd expect from a solid API. So this method simply takes a string, as you can see. Let's just say hello world. The generator also gives you a task, which allows you to start and restart what's called the extension host, which is a second window, a second instance of Visual Studio Code, which you can see right here. It's written in the title, extension development host. This one is going to run the code of our extension, while the previous one is able to edit the code. So as you might have seen, we have a notification that just displayed that says hello world. All good. So in Visual Studio Code, a lot of things happen through the command palette, which is Control-Shift-P. So in this palette, you have everything that's available in Visual Studio Code, either built-in or added by extensions. Lots and lots of things. So what we're going to do is just add a hello world command in there to show our information message only when actually triggered. So let's remove that for now. We're going to register a command that's done on the commands.register command function. Every command and most other things you're going to declare in your extension will need identifiers. In our case, we'll just do Star Wars.hello. And the second argument is the function you want to call. So in our case, I'm just going to paste the code we had, and you'll see just through that you are registering a new command in Visual Studio Code. We're going to need to tell it what text to display, since you can see that there's in this list no actual command name but a title, and that's done in the package JSON. There's a special section in it called contribute, which is just an object that can contain whatever you need to declare. You'll see there are lots of things. Autocomplete works as well here, so I'm just going to use it to declare a new command. So just declare a commands section, and you'll see I'm just using the autocomplete here to type everything. It's really easy to use. So let's declare, for example, the Star Wars.hello command, give it a title. Let's see, hello world. Okay. It's common practice to group commands from the same extension under the same prefix or category, as it's called. For example, here if I type help, you'll see I have lots of commands that are related to help, and we're going to do the same in our extension. We're going to group them under the Star Wars title. Okay, so I've declared my command and I've implemented it. Let's restart the extension host. Okay, it has started, and see, we have the Star Wars hello world command available. If I run it, hello world. Okay, well, let's do something more interesting that actually uses the Star Wars API. We're going to list the characters from the movies. So to do that, instead of a hello world command, we are going to see, let's call it show characters or search characters. That's better. And instead of implementing it directly here, I'm just going to put it in an external function, search characters. Function search characters. Okay, and now we're ready to go. So what should this function do? Well, this function, first of all, should somehow fetch the characters from the movies. So let's just call the API. We can use async await here. We're in TypeScript, and VS Code itself handles promises really well. And in most cases, whenever you declare a function or pass a function to any method of the API, it allows you to use a promise as a return type and catches errors automatically, displays them in message boxes. It's really well built, so you don't have to worry about anything. So let's fetch our characters from the API. Let's declare the method as async, and instead of displaying a message box for each character, which would be quite a lot of them, we'll use the quick pick functionality, which is the one you see, for example, here. The commands are displayed in what they call a quick pick, so it's basically an input box and a list below, and whatever text is typed in the input box will actually filter the list below. To display the quick pick, we'll just use the show quick pick method, which is quite simple. It just takes an array of strings as input. So I'm just going to use my characters, and for each character I'm going to take the name. And just like that, we should have a quick pick with all the Star Wars characters in them. Oh, see, I made a mistake there. I forgot to edit the package.json, so my command is not gonna work properly. Let's just copy paste the ID of the command, paste it here, and call it search characters. Okay, restart. Okay, we have the new name. Let's wait a few seconds because my internet connection is quite slow at the moment. And see, we have the results, the list of characters from Star Wars. If I type something, it filters the list below. We'll see later how to actually call the remote API to search the full list of characters, because as you can see, when we have 10 right here, instead of who knows how many. Okay, so we have displayed our list of characters, but it's not the easiest way to see the characters. I think it would be better if we had a view, like for example, the Explorer we have on the left. If I come back here, you see you have a file explorer, you have all kinds of previews that are available in VS Code. It would be a shame not to use them, and you'll see it's very easy to use that instead of a quick pick. So to display them in the sidebar, we need to declare a view first. The view is the container for our data. So let's just declare the view. Our view is going to be attached to the Explorer panel, this one, and it's going to be just like the others. Here you have 1, 2, and a third one here, and we're going to add a fourth, just like that. So view needs an ID, Star Wars.characters, and the view needs a name, and the name is just going to be characters as well. Just like that, we now have a panel called characters. Of course, it's empty. We haven't written any code yet, but let's do that. So just like we can declare comments, we can declare views in the code. To do that, you do workspace window that register tree data provider. What that means is that we are going to provide something that returns a tree. In our case, well, it's going to be a tree, but with only one level, which is going to be a list, actually. So just give it an ID, Star Wars characters, as we said in the package JSON, and then the provider. Okay, so what does our provider do? Whoops, sorry. It's a tree provider. What does it provide? It provides characters, so we can use the type defined in our API, and it needs only 2 methods. The first one is the one that tells you what's in the tree. Since we only have 1 level, we're not going to care about any arguments in this method. We're just going to return a list of characters. You'll notice that this method fetch characters returns a promise of a list, and that's not a problem. As I said before, VS Code lets you return promises, and will actually even display a progress bar itself to tell you that it's an asynchronous operation. So we have this first method that tells you what the list of items is, but now you also need to tell VS Code how to render those items. So what we're gonna want to do here is just display a name for each one. So again, autocomplete get tree item is gonna take our character as an argument, and it's going to return an object with what we need inside. What we need is the label. The label is going to be the character's name. Okay, all good. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, VS Code is starting. You'll see that we have a progress bar over here because the data is loading, and now we have the characters. Okay, that's good. However, the view is quite small. You can resize it, but you know, it'd be better if it had its own separate panel. So let's add a new icon to the activity bar. Activity bar is the name of the sidebar in VS Code. As you can notice, it needs an icon, and we're going to use one that I've included in the project. Icons are SVG files. You have lots of free icons available online in that format, and you can easily create a new one with whatever online tool you want. Okay, so to declare a new item in the activity bar, it's actually called a view group, a view container, sorry. We put it in the activity bar, autocomplete everywhere. The ID of our entry is going to be Star Wars, and it's going to have a title, Star Wars, as well. Whoops. And an icon, as we said. This one I've already put in the project. Okay, just like that, we should have declared a new one. You might have seen it flash over here. Why didn't it stay visible? Well, because it's empty. So let's move the block of characters into the view. I'm just going to copy the ID of our view container and use it right here in our views declaration to tell it to attach to it instead of attaching to the Explorer view group. Okay, restart. It's not there anymore, and now we have the Star Wars entry right there. It's loading, and we're going to have the characters, yes, in a second. Wonderful. So right now, what we might want to do is actually interact with our characters. Right now, nothing happens if I click or double click or right click. It's completely unresponsive. Let's make it do something. For this, we're just going to have a look at our tree item. We've provided a label here, but as you saw earlier, there are lots of other things. Some of them are related to the fact that you can display a tree with collapsed elements, and some others are used to show various icons or make VS Code understand that this is a file, which it is not in our case. But the one that's going to matter to us is the command section, which allows us to bind a command to each item. So let's do just that. What's the name of the command that we're going to call when the user clicks? Well, in our case, we won't bother with implementing a new command for that. We're just going to use a command that already exists in VS Code. That's quite useful. It's the Markdown preview command. What it does is it opens a new tab with an HTML preview of whatever Markdown code you give it. If you don't know Markdown, it's a simple markup format that allows you to add formatting to raw text, to plain text. It's very useful to know it. It's used in lots of things, and in our case, we're just going to use its basic functionality to declare title and some text in our tab. So the name of that command is markdown. Let me check. It's either open preview or show preview. Yes, it's show preview. And the arguments to that command, there are only one. It's the URI of whichever file we want to preview. Turns out we don't actually have files for each character, but we're going to pretend we have, and we'll do that by declaring a new protocol. So it's a URI, and you can just build it from a string. We'll declare a new Star Wars protocol, SW / characters, whatever we want here. It's useful to put the character name as the last path element so that our preview will actually show the name of the character in the tab's name. So the tab's name will be preview whatever the name of the character is. And then I'm just gonna cheat and put a hash followed by another string. What that does is it allows me to add the stringified JSON object of that character directly in my URL. In a real extension, you'd want to store it somewhere else, but it makes my life easier here. You'll see why in a second. So when the Markdown preview will try to open this URL, it will look for a handler for that protocol, and right now there is none, but we're gonna add one right now. So let's do workspace register text document content provider for this protocol. It's W. Okay, text provider. Okay, so let's declare it now. SW text provider is a text document content provider. There's only one method to implement, which is provide text document content. It's quite explicit what it does. It takes the URI as a parameter. So what I'm just going to do is extract my character's JSON object, which I put right there. It's in the URI fragment, so it's hidden from the user point of view, but it's accessible just like that. I'm going to parse it since it's JSON. What you might want to do in this same function is also call whatever remote service you might need. In my case, I have all the data I need, but you might need some more for your use case. So we have a character, and we can just return the Markdown text we want to display. Okay, so character name, the hash in the front means that it's going to be a title, and we can just write whatever we want. So for example, this character was born in the year, and let's just put the birth date of our character. Okay. You can draw tables in Markdown as well. You can use basically most formatting options you'd expect. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Okay, sorry, there's a build error apparently. Where is it? Oh yeah, it's right there. I asked to bind a command to each item, but I didn't provide a title for the command. It's going to be open character, for example. Okay, restart. Let's just wait for the characters to come back from the API. Okay, there we go. And if I click Darth Vader, as you can see, the Markdown has been rendered to HTML and is displayed in a nice way in the interface. The name of the character is well displayed in the tab's name through the clever use of URL's last element. Let's add something fun to this. For example, let's call another service to get a picture of our character. Here I'm going to use await because same as everywhere else, we are allowed to return a promise instead of just returning the Markdown directly. So let's call fetch character image URL with the character name, and let's make our function async. There we go. Let's reload. Okay, it's fetching the characters and it's fetching the preview as well. And there we go, with a nice picture. Okay, so in your use case, you might want to add more commands to each item. You can even add commands right there through icons as well that will allow you to, for example, modify the item that's selected. For example, a CRUD app would want to delete resources or create new ones. We've seen that you can easily display inputs. That's quite useful. There's a whole mechanism to display steps when you have multiple questions to ask, and so on. But I won't go into more details regarding that. I'll just show you how to add an icon right at the top here. We'll just connect the command that we implemented right at the beginning, the search one. Let's do that. So the command is still declared here. So we'll only have to make a small change to the package JSON to put it in the view. What we're going to do is declare a menu, and this menu is the one that's in the view's title. This is the title, characters, so we'll put it right there. Let's just reference the command through its ID. Okay, copy, paste. The group is going to be navigation because we are declaring a menu, but we don't want it to appear as a menu item. We really want it to appear as an icon, and that's called navigation group. Talking about the icon, we haven't actually declared it yet, so let's add it to this command. Again, it's just an SVG file. Okay, reconnect. There you go. Search characters is displayed in the menu title. If I click it, as you can see, we have the search that we had previously. This search right now is not clever. It just fetches the list of characters, which is actually only the first page of results from the server, since we don't want to fetch 10,000 results. But what would be great is that if we type, we can actually get more results. And right now it only does filtering. So if I type J, for example, which is containing names of some characters, well, we have no results. Let's call the API instead. So what we've used in our command is the show quick pick. It's a method that's a shortcut when you don't need to do many things in your picker, but since we want to call an API, we'll use the full version of the quick pick API, which is done with a method that's named create quick pick, which returns a quick pick. And on that object, you can do lots of things. For example, you can define a title, a placeholder, and you can update the values in real time. So first things first, we're going to add, let's say, a placeholder. Let's say type to search Star Wars characters. And then let's add a handler. Whenever the user types. So as you can see, you have lots of handlers because the quick pick can handle many situations like picking multiple items and so on. But we don't need all that. Right now, we only care when the user changes what is typed in the placeholder instead of placeholder. Okay, so when the user changes the value, well, we need to provide a function here that takes the value typed by the user and returns something. Actually, if you return a promise, it's not going to be displayed as a progress. So you'll want to take care of that manually by setting a busy flag. Just enable it when you start, stop it when you stop. Now, if the user has typed a value, then we're going to fetch whatever matches in the API. So the characters, search characters by name, and let's just put the value typed by the user here and await the result. Let's make this whole thing async. Whenever we get the result back, let's just replace the items with our new characters. So what we'll do here is just map each character to an object, and that can have a label. That's the character's name. C.name. You can define other options, but we don't need to right now. What matters is that you use a few known properties. You can add others if you need to pass information to code that's going to follow whenever the user actually confirms his choice. But right now we're just going to display the character's name. If you need to know exactly what you can give as an argument, just have a look at the documentation for the API. It's quite complete. So we are extending a quick pick item which has a label, an optional description, detail, and picked. Those are the well-known values, and anything else is going to pass through. Okay, if the user has removed the value, we'll just reset the list of items to empty to clear everything. Since we are calling a remote API, we might have race conditions. When the user types fast, we don't want to trigger 10 calls to the API, but right now we won't care about that. We're just make sure we don't actually show the wrong results. That's all we're going to care about right now. So if the quick pick item value is not the value we have the results for, we're just going to escape by returning. Okay, with that done, we should have a functioning quick pick. Let's see. Okay, let's search the characters. It takes a little while to display, probably because it's making a request in the background, or because I misclicked somehow. That's weird. Okay, let's have a look at the code. What could go wrong? Oh yeah, of course, forgot to show the quick pick. That doesn't help. Okay, so this time it should be good. Let's wait for the characters to come back from the API. Okay, and search. Okay, so now it displays instantly. If I type a character, as you can see, we had a small progress bar here, and now the results that come back from the API are displayed. As you can see, it's not the same lists because we actually call the API and not just filter the results we already had. Okay, but what would be good is to show the same preview if I select character. Turns out right now I can't actually select anything. I can move through the list, but I cannot confirm. So let's add a handler for that. qp on. So which one do we need? We need the accept one. And when the user accepts, we'll want to call the same command as the one we had here. We'll do that by doing commands dot execute command. What it takes is the ID of the command and the various arguments. So we'll just copy paste this block right here. Okay, and remove what's not necessary. There we go. We don't have the character's name right here, but that's not a problem. We can actually put the whole character here. And let's take this one, qp dot. Let's see. I think it's selected items. Let me just check. Yeah. Maybe it's active or maybe it's selected. Yeah, it's selected. Okay. Okay, it complains that it's supposed to be a quick pick item, but here it's actually more than a quick pick item, and so we can tell it that it's more than a quick pick item like that. So it's a quick pick item with additional properties, and in our case the property is character of type character. So this way it's actually type checked that we return something that's correct. Okay, let's save. Why does it still complain? Property character does not exist on type. Oh yeah, it's an array, my bad. We only want the first selected item. Okay, let's reconnect. Let's search, type J, and now we should be able to select something. There we go, Jar Jar Binks. As you can see, the Visual Studio API is quite easy to use. What's great about it is that you can easily discover what it can do. The documentation of the code is really good, and thanks to TypeScript, you can just explore the API and find whatever fits your needs. It's great that you have access to the Node.js API as a whole. That means that you can call not only HTTP endpoints, but whatever you need, be it RabbitMQ or authenticated services, whichever protocol you might be using for your services. You can connect it to your cluster, do whatever management tasks you need to automate. And this way, if you also build services that have no backend, you can easily build one through VS Code. Since you don't need to show it to your clients, you can just put it right there where you're working in your editor. It makes sense. When you're done building your extension, you might want to publish it on the marketplace. It's quite easy to do so. If you don't want to put it out there publicly, then you can also build a Visual Studio extension as a file, which you can then install. Right now, the marketplace is not available for personal use, so you can deploy it somewhere and tell your Visual Studio to go see there and fetch updates from there. But that's a trade-off. That's not that big a deal, I think. Of course, it depends on your context. All right. I hope you enjoy your time. See you later. Bye-bye.